And now for our feature presentation.
He'll be fire on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series. Watson, touchdown. Hunter Renfrow. He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Senegal baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers. Get the ball to Bennett. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right, greetings and a good Monday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and driven by our friends in yours at Stokes Volkswagen. Find them at stokesvw.com. Find us on the JB and Goldwater app. You can download that into your phone. It's free, and you can watch or listen to our program daily in its entirety. You can always go back and check us out as well if you happen to miss what we're doing around here daily from noon until 2 p.m., and that's what it'll be today. And we'll be joined today by three very special guests. It was a really good weekend and a really busy weekend for South Carolina. So all of our guests today will involve the University of South Carolina in some way, shape, or form. Skylar Meade here in just a little bit. David Cloninger a little bit later on live in San Antonio, and Wes Mitchell coming up in about 30 minutes here, all for different reasons, and we'll get to those here in just a moment. But if you are watching to the right of the screen, that is me, JB. To the left, that's Darren Goldwater. You can follow us across social media, all platforms at JB and Goldwater, individually on Twitter at SportsMediaJB and at Darren Goldwater. 843-321-8893 is our phone number. It is also our text line. It is open, and you can send us a question, comment, concern, whatever it may be, and we'll pop it right into the program and make it a part of our day. The Elite Eight is set to go tonight. We've got some football to get to, plenty of baseball as well. Big news out of Nashville today involving the future of Vanderbilt's athletics department, which that might not mean a whole lot to many of you who watch and listen to our program, but it should, because if you invest $300 million into a university in the middle of Nashville, that might mean something really good for the future of their athletics departments. We'll get to all that, but first and foremost, happy Monday. I hope you had a great weekend. What's up, man?
Yeah, I had a fantastic weekend because we are now 3 days away from opening day. Everyone gets underway Thursday. There might be a game Wednesday, but everyone gets underway on Thursday. I'm good. I've been missing this, right? A full season of baseball. It's back. It's 3 days away. I'm good. I'm ready for the week.
Yeah, this is another one of those moments we missed last year type conversations because we didn't. Opening day last year obviously got delayed until, what was it, June?
Whenever it was.
Yeah, I think it was June or maybe July, whenever it was. Doesn't matter. And so now you're in the middle of March Madness. You've got opening day. You got the Masters, not this weekend, but next weekend.
Yep.
You've got the NBA ongoing. You've got spring football right now. Obviously, you have college baseball. I mean, it's a pretty special time in the sports world, and hockey.
Yep. It's one of my favorite times of the year. Every single year, right now, get into the Final Four. You got baseball. You got the Masters. I mean, it's perfect. This is perfect. Now, if we can get the pollen to go away, I'm good.
That's right. Well, the rain yesterday certainly helped that around here.
Yeah.
We, of course, broadcasting live from the low country of South Carolina, but we'll hit the road for Columbia here in about 5 minutes, and the pitching coach of the Gamecocks, Skylar Meade, is going to pop in. What a weekend. They brought out one hell of a broom at Founders Park this weekend and swept the Florida Gators right back to the swamp. Matter of fact, they drained the whole thing. Gamecocks have jumped up in the polls as well. We'll get to that here in just a little bit, but it was wild starting with Friday night into the early hours of Saturday morning, a 14-inning affair, got them led off in the right direction, the Gamecock baseball program. So Skylar's going to recap all of that here in just a couple of minutes. Wes Mitchell is going to give us the backstory on Frank Martin. It does look like the future of Frank in Columbia is safe, but there's a lot going on. And I dug up as much as I could late Friday afternoon. Matter of fact, Darren, I took Friday afternoon, like maybe a lot of parents do, to spend some time with my children. And I was at the park, and my phone kept going off, and I thought, what on God's green earth is going on here? I thought it was a family text chain because we had a little Easter get together yesterday, early Easter get together. I finally looked at it and had about 7 messages from different people. And I thought, oh my gosh. So I picked up the phone and called a couple of folks and found out what I could. And as the weekend kind of unraveled, there were some more details that trickled out. So we'll let Wes Mitchell tell the Frank Martin story at 12:30. It's not official, but it certainly appears that it's headed that way, that he will return as the head basketball coach for the Gamecocks. And then David Cloninger at 1:20 this afternoon. He is going to join us live in San Antonio, where tomorrow night he'll be covering an Elite Eight matchup between a familiar foe, but not in Texas. It's Vic Schaefer, who coaches the Longhorns, longtime head coach at Mississippi State, and he'll renew a rivalry with Don Staley and the Lady G's. And they have gotten the best of Vic Schaefer for the large majority of the time over the last few years. But all that is ahead in our program. First, so Darren, let me kind of run down what happened in case you, for some off-the-wall reason, slept through the weekend and didn't see it. But Oregon State, of course, tops Loyola Chicago. They're into the Elite Eight. So is Baylor. So is Arkansas in a squeaker over Oral Roberts, a come-from-behind victory for the Razorbacks. Houston, of course, advances. That all happened on Saturday. And then yesterday, Gonzaga, another big victory. They continue to just motor right along here. Michigan walloped Florida State. How about UCLA and Alabama? That was the game of the weekend. That 10-point spread, if you missed it, is not indicative of how the game went. It was a remarkable ball game, including a 3 to tie it at the buzzer for the Tide, but overtime went in favor of the 11th-seeded Bruins. They advanced, and then last night a Pac-12 matchup, and it was Southern Cal getting into the Elite Eight, and that set up today's 2 ball games between 12th-seeded Oregon State and 2nd-seeded Houston and 3rd-seeded Arkansas and top-seeded Baylor. Both of those games will be on CBS. The first one tips at 7:15, 9:57 the late tip in Game 2, and then tomorrow night, Southern Cal and Gonzaga and UCLA and Michigan, same times, but the TBS, of course, will be airing those tomorrow night. But you'll notice there is no East Coast flavor in this one. Arkansas, the closest thing we can get to it out of the SEC, but you got Oregon State, you got Southern Cal, you got Gonzaga, you got UCLA. Props to the West Coast, man. The Pac-12, the West Coast, the heart of America, represented by Baylor and Houston. And if you want to throw Michigan in there, this is a not a whole lot of East Coast flavor.
Well, you mentioned it. Arkansas is the closest thing we've got to an East Coast team in here. UCLA becomes the 2nd team ever, joining VCU from a first 4 in from that playing game to then reach it all the way to the Elite Eight. You've got Oregon State, who's now won, I believe, 9 of their last 10 games, even though they finished in the middle of the Pac-12. It's a matter of who got hot, but it's still fairly chalky in there too. I mean, you've got Gonzaga there, you got Michigan there, you got Baylor there. Yeah. So this thing is going to play itself out in a very chalk-like manner at the end in terms of the actual final results that we thought. I mean, it's hard to believe right now that it's not setting up for a Gonzaga-Baylor showdown.
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah, there's 3 1s in there, folks. Let's they've I mean, as difficult as it probably was to seed this year, they seemingly got a lot of it right, at least thus far. So
yeah,
we'll kind of see where it heads. The women, of course, their Elite Eight begins tonight. Here's Baylor again, but they're 2 seed, and they, of course, have top-seeded UConn on ESPN at 7 o'clock. And then at 9, one of these 2 teams is going to the Final Four for the first time ever. Indiana and Arizona, a 4-3 matchup on ESPN. And then tomorrow night is where you'll find Dawn Staley and the Lady G's leading off the schedule with 6-seeded Texas, as I mentioned, now coached, first-year head coach at Texas, Vic Schaefer, formerly of Mississippi State. That'll be on ESPN from the Alamo Dome. And then Louisville and Stanford, the late one tomorrow night, 2-1 matchup there. Stanford, as Debbie Antonelli said on our program just a couple of weeks ago, is really, really good. And we'll see if the Cards can get them. Speaking of Louisville, that's where Skylar Meade played baseball. They got a pretty proud baseball, basketball, and football program. But I know he's proud of his Gamecocks because this weekend they swept right through the Florida Gators, formerly 5th-ranked Florida Gators. Gamecocks, by the way, have jumped all the way from 25 to 14 in the poll that we use most often around here, which is the D1Baseball.com poll. And he joins us live now from Columbia, South Carolina. I know that you're probably a little worn down because that Friday night game took it out of everybody, but you're not as tired as Colin Burgess is today. He caught 32 innings this weekend and also managed to mix in about 6 or 7 hits, including a walk-off. But overall, Skylar, I can't imagine how proud you and King and Lake and everybody in that program are of your kids. What a remarkable, remarkable sweep of Florida at Founders Park.
Yeah, it was a fun weekend. Obviously, it started with what was one of the wilder games anyone's probably ever seen, whether they're a Gamecock or been somebody else. I mean, it was a wild one on Friday, and thought it was impressive the way that we came out and really just took care of business the next 2 days as well, and handled ourselves, made some adjustments with some things, and obviously came out with a sweep, which I'm sure not a lot of people thought was going to happen before the weekend.
Oh, I did. I told you that on Friday. I expected this. Let's go backwards. Let's go backwards. And by the way, I want to give Skylar major props here because he's like not on staff with us, but it feels like he is. He's on a lot, and he always answers the phone when I call, and he's a good dude. But let's go back to kind of bring all of this into perspective a little bit, Skylar. And we mentioned this with you on Friday. Y'all had to really get off the mat last Sunday in Nashville. I mean, again, we don't have to go through what happened, but we all know what happened with Jack Leiter. It was a special day for him, and you haven't lost since. And 4 of those 5 wins are against top 5 teams. And so clearly that Sunday game, your talent, it's a talented bunch. We all know it's not a talent issue. South Carolina's got damn good baseball players, but something clicked mentally, and it like brought back what kind of got going in the middle of the beginning of the season. And these one-run games, these close games, your guys aren't intimidated by anything. Obviously, that Sunday has just kind of kept rolling right along, and here you are in the middle of a 5-game winning streak. I don't think people realize how difficult it was for your team to turn the page that Sunday and get back into the win column. And this game is so funny. It's amazing what those things can do for you.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I mean, that was a special effort that allowed us to get that win against Vanderbilt. And then, of course, our Tuesday game with Citadel, which was a very important one last week. We were really clean and efficient on the mound. And then obviously this weekend we know what happened. But, yeah, I mean, things can change so quick one way or another. And I think the most important thing, and I remember we talked about this on Friday a little bit, is you got to just really stay the course, especially in this league. You can't get too high, you can't get too low. And just because one day doesn't go your way doesn't mean the next day and the days beyond that can certainly turn really quick. And, I think luckily we got a lot of guys that are able to, wipe the slate clean one day at a time. And I think we do that. And I was most impressed really with, they could have really been feeling themselves coming into yesterday and not had premier prep and focus just because they'd won a couple games. You know how these guys are. They're all on social media and they hear things when it's bad. They definitely read it when it's good. But I thought we came out and just really took care of business, which was not easy to do. Their content could have, got in there a little bit, but it didn't, thankfully, and allowed us to win another game yesterday.
All right, so you get to Friday, and Tommy Mace is a really good Friday night guy for Florida, but he wasn't missing a lot of barrels. Your guys were teeing him up. As a matter of fact, I think he gave up 10 hits through 4, Skylar, and he probably could have given up 13 or 14. Your guys were hitting him on the nose. They scrape a couple too in the first inning against Thomas, which is unusual for him. Usually he's pretty sharp early on. And but he just didn't have his best stuff, and he walked, I think, 6 guys. You had to go get him probably a little bit earlier than you wanted to, and then your bullpen goes in there and throws basically 9 innings, a little over 9 innings. Mahoney, Danny Lloyd, proud to hit that young man. You know, he's really getting his confidence back. It looks like Peters. You got Bosnick. How about Bosnick? You remove him from the Sunday role, and sometimes you wonder what's going to happen with a kid like that. And it's like he just embraced it this weekend. He was dynamite.
Yeah, he was. Certainly his mentality coming in Friday, you know, throwing the ball, 97 miles an hour was something we had not yet seen this spring. And so thought that was very impressive. And, even with that home run, which I must be honest with you, of all home runs I've seen in Founders Park, and we all know how this place plays. It plays like a phone booth. It's pretty small, but that one I did not think was going out. I know we were all very shocked at that. And so, but his stuff was impressive all weekend. I thought yesterday he was brilliant, and Brett Carey was Brett Carey. I mean, he's just been incredible. And yeah, that Friday night though, that relief, especially from those last 3 guys with Danny, Andrew Peters, who was just awesome, and Bosnick the game was on the line every pitch, and I was talking to one of our freshmen this morning about that very thing. And sometimes you got to realize you got to dedicate yourself to every single pitch, because especially when you throw in high leverage spots or you play in a league like this, the game truly is on the line every pitch. And that's not putting pressure on it. That's just the reality. Like, you can't have a slip, because when you do, you're going to get burned, whether it's giving up a hit or, getting behind an account. Like, you got to commit 100% to every pitch you throw.
Well, y'all did. And you get to the 14th, and the Hickey kid hit. By the way, my eyes were barely staying open. I mean, I was tired. I was about to send you a message, say, hey, somebody figure this out here. I got to get to bed. I got to get up early with the kids. So the Hickey kid hits the home run, right? What was Mark's message? What was King's message in the dugout? What did y'all talk about when you get back in there? You're down 1. You're going to have to come back and at least try to tie this thing right now or it's over. What was the message before your guys came up to the plate in the bottom of the 14th?
Well, it's funny. The mics this weekend seemed to be ultra hot, because you could hear everything that was going on. And so you can actually hear some of it. He said, guys, like, they gave a punch. Let's give one right back. Just like when we were playing at Vanderbilt, you could catch, on the mic, him saying that, hey, guys, we got Brett Carey. Just get the lead, and we will win this game. We got Brett Carey. And so it was very positive. And, I'm sure that a little doubt had crept in slightly when we got to 2 outs and 2 strikes in that game. But thankfully, Andrew, went to right field like he's so good at doing. And then obviously Heinrich and Burgess had their heroics after. But yeah, the message was very positive. And let's be honest, someone was going to win that game and someone was going to lose, but both teams played at a level which was deserving of winning.
Oh, no kidding. I don't feel bad for Florida, though. Skylar, what is it? What's the deal with Eister? What's this kid's deal, man? I mean, he's got ice in his veins. It's like, if you could forget having him come up to the plate with, a 10-run lead or nobody on base and stuff like that. Like, he needs the moment. He needs the, hey, you got to tie it or win it here. This is the go ahead run. This is the type of kid. It feels like he's got that built inside of him. What type of kid is he? What makes him go? You don't see kids like this often, but very rarely does he step into a situation that's bigger than he is.
Well, I don't know if you ever heard him talk before, and this is Coach Lake's line on him, but he's got like a really like old soul. Like, he's a very chill kid. Like, he can talk with like the coaches. Not that we're all old guys or anything like that, but like, he can talk with the coaches and just carry on like normal conversations that maybe have nothing to do with baseball. He's just a mature kid, and so I think that steadiness that he has allows him to thrive in those type spots. Like, he is definitely not one of those kids that's slamming down a Red Bull and then trying to go up and get a big hit. Like, that's not his DNA. And, I mean, really, let's be honest, watch enough college baseball or check social media. That's kind of what some guys try to do. And I think that's really hard in the game of baseball because of the highs and lows we talked about earlier. But to me, him being the way he is and exhibiting a lot of poise, like I think of Andrew, like I know you guys were talking about basketball a little bit before, like he's like the point guard that you want the ball in the hands at the end of the game when it's a 1-1 and you're up by 2 and you're like, hey, if you hit this, you hit the first free throw, we got it to 3, so we feel like we shouldn't lose. But if you go ahead and just make both, you ice this game. And I think he's got a little bit of that to him where he can trust him in those really pivotal moments.
Skylar Meade, pitching coach of the Gamecocks, 12:20 on this Monday afternoon. And then you can't finish this conversation, and I'm not done talking about him. We'll get to him again here in just a moment. But Colin Burgess, this kid caught 32 innings this weekend, and he hits the walk-off in this ball game. You mentioned before the season with us that, he's kind of the guy that stirs the drink. He's the little engine that could type kid. I mean, he gets out there, he makes them go. The staff feels comfortable with him. I'm sure his legs were getting awfully achy there as that sucker continued to go inning after inning, and there wasn't a conclusion just yet. And I guess he finally said, I hit the hell with it. I'm going to get this thing over myself. Tell me about Colin and just how he approaches the game every day and why that moment there, why he deserved that moment.
Well, he's an ultra competitive kid who, he is definitely not like some guys play the role of, I'm not scared of hitting against a certain guy or, as a pitcher pitching against a certain guy, but like deep down, if you got them on a lie detector, they're a little bit scared. Like Burgess is not one of those guys. Like he thinks he can hit any guy in the country. He thinks he can throw out any guy in the country. He just has that confidence about him that he's probably had for a long time. And him being a smaller guy, he's probably always had to fight that a little bit, which, I think can actually be a good thing for guys. But, he just gets after it. And I thought it was great for him. I think you and I may be talking about this in a text, but for him to get the walk-off hit was just like, it was poetic justice because of the grind he put back there. And, early on in that game, it wasn't our pitching staff's finest moment of the year with Thomas having a little bit of uncharacteristic struggle, but he went through and he allowed those relievers to be immaculate. And then, so for him to do that and then to do it for another 18 innings the next, 2 days with especially the way the pitching staff threw. I mean, he is a massive reason because of it. I always revert back to, we played our Fall World Series here and, he was the very first guy chosen. And some people would maybe go, well, why'd you choose Burgess? You guys got Wes Clark and Brady Allen. And those guys are all incredible. But Burgess can help the game in 2 ways. He makes every pitcher better, and he obviously can swing the bat a little bit too. So we got to keep him upright, got to keep him healthy. Thankfully, he's so darn slow, we'll never ask him to steal any bases. So he can just go station to station. I'm glad they didn't review his walk-off hit in the gap because I wanted to make sure he made it to first base before, the game ended, because I know he don't go down that line too fast. But he's a great kid and fun guy to coach.
Yeah, but you could have given him a pass on that. He just caught 14-inch.
Well, did you appreciate his
9 pitches
yesterday?
Yeah, his home run try. Yeah, he was going to take his time there.
Yeah, that home run try. The only thing missing was the Kirk Gibson fist pump. He didn't just like him going around those bases yesterday.
All right, we'll boogie through the rest of the weekend here, and then I'll let you go. I hope folks remember this. The season isn't over. Y'all actually have to keep playing games. But you get to game 2. I don't know if you've had a better start this year from anybody besides what Brandon Jordan gave you against the number 5 Gators with the series right there in your grasp. 7 innings, 5 hits, 1 run. It was not earned. He had 9 strikeouts. He threw 94 pitches. Skylar, he was brilliant.
Yeah, Brandon was outstanding. He, once again, another hyper competitive dude. And, he's a guy that certainly got a knack for striking guys out. But sometimes that can run off the pitch count a little bit too. And I thought he was very efficient the other day. He overcame a couple of defensive miscues we had. And I thought he handled it really well. And then once the game got to about the fifth, he started really cooking. And, then I think the way he started going, our defense took a deep breath, made some good plays. Guys got good breaks on things. Burgie was, doing his deal for him back there. And it was so important, though, because you utilize a lot of your bullpen on that Friday night. Now you had Carey back there, and obviously he was holy heck good on Saturday. But you just didn't want to get into a situation where you were going to have to, use a ton of guys, and him going 7 innings like he did. And let's be honest, he could have gone out there for an 8th if need be, but we decided to pass the baton to Brett and let him close that thing out, in style.
Well, he did. 23 pitches for Brett Carey in 2 innings, did not give up a hit, struck out 3. You win the series, and then you get to yesterday. This might be a better question for Coach Lake or Mark or those hitting guys over there at the other end of the dugout that you probably don't talk to a whole lot. But I'm kidding. You had to have the same conversations with your staff. What were those conversations like? The wind was blowing out. You knew it was going to be a factor in the game. Obviously, your guys took advantage of that early on against Florida. They had a lefty on the mound who was trying to stay away. You were just poking them up, and they were leaving the ballpark, able to jump out on top pretty early there. So what were you telling Will Sanders and Bosnick, and then when Carey got in there, what were those conversations like, and how you were going to try to maintain and pitch that Gators offense to make sure the same didn't happen? I know they had a couple leave the yard as well, but at the end of the day, it wasn't 8 or 9 runs like the amount of runs your guys scored.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was certainly, the wind was blowing out about 30 yesterday, and it felt like every inch of the park except maybe right down that left field line. And so, no, that's a factor in it. You choose the pitches you're going to throw sometimes with that in mind. You're not going to totally deviate from a guy's strength. I think that would be silly to do. But at the same token, you do have to sometimes in, high leverage or important pitches, you got to factor in what's going on. You talked about Barco, the lefty, yesterday. He was trying to get those fastballs in on guys, but he's got a lot of arm side run, and he kept running out over the plate, and our guys were poking it to right and doing a great job of utilizing our park to our advantage. And so, the way that Sanders was getting the ball downhill, obviously Bosnick was stuffing dudes on his glove side, and the way Carey just does whatever he wants. It was really impressive overcoming that, because those are the type of days that, you could very easily see some sort of wild game, happen, because any ball in the air was a home run. You hold your breath when the weather's like that here at Founders Park. But luckily we handled it really well and allowed us to have a pretty clean, efficient, and by the way, another fast game, another game under 2 hours and 35 minutes, which everybody likes.
I know Burgess enjoyed that. Because you had 2 young arms start this game. The Barco kid, I think he's technically a sophomore, but he's listed as a freshman because of the COVID stuff. And then, of course, y'all had Sanders in there. And you could see, I don't know if you were paying attention or watching it from the dugout, but on TV, you could see the frustration with Barco. And I get it. He was like, dude, what do I need to do here? This is ridiculous. These are lazy routine balls that should be, that should be 20 feet short of the wall. And they're landing on the other side of it here. And I don't know that he could get his emotions in check early enough to prevent what happened. But Sanders seemingly, I know that, he wasn't perfect, but he was really good. I think you probably got exactly what you needed out of him. 4 innings in that start there. What'd you learn about him? Is he a guy that you'll continue to consider for the weekends?
I think he's going to continue to be in some consideration, and I think he's earned that right. And I thought he handled himself tremendously well, just the way he came out and just, attacked guys, kept throwing that really good breaking ball. He was turning over his changeup to both righties and lefties yesterday. It was very impressive, and obviously, throwing the baseball 95, 97 every time he goes out with a 6'7" body. And it's pretty unique what he's doing right now. And so, is he perfect right now? No, but he's certainly trending in a positive way, and he'll continue to throw important innings for us, just as he has all year. And whether that's starting or he has to come in a game and relieve, I'm sure he'll continue to do his job well.
When will you announce a starter for tomorrow night's game? Y'all going to wait and do that tomorrow? Figure it out.
Yeah, I think we're going to announce something here in the next hour or two. I know we were actually all meeting, and then a couple of us are doing We actually all on a couple calls. As I'm talking to you, I'm walking around the top of the building and see everybody on their phones. Looks like a weird coaches convention out here with everyone talking on their cell phones. Yeah, we're going to announce probably in the next hour or two who that will be. But we'll definitely have to have multiple arms throw tomorrow night. That I can guarantee you.
All right, we'll let you go be a part of that. We don't want them to announce a starter without you knowing who it is. You're the pitching coach.
Hopefully they'll allow me to have a little say in that one.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, it's a week of Bulldogs. You've got Gardner-Webb tomorrow night, and then you hit the road for Athens to take on your SEC East rivals, Georgia. 7 o'clock first pitch at Founders Park, and then a 6 o'clock first pitch to lead off the weekend at oh God, I can't remember the name of the ballpark now in Athens. Somebody help me out here.
Georgia's Park.
Foley, right?
Yeah, Foley Field. Yeah.
Foley Field. There we go.
Yeah. Where, by the way,
my WWF watching when I was a kid, Mick Foley.
There you go.
I remember that.
Yeah, Foley Field, which is the site 15 years ago of 5 consecutive home runs off the bat of Gamecocks in a super regional. I'll never forget that moment. I'm sure we'll actually talk about it tomorrow with Mike Morgan, who had the call that day on the radio. But, hey, go get them this week, Skylar. Congratulations to you, your staff, and most importantly, your team on a wonderful weekend sweep of the Florida Gators. Really look good out there, and I hope it keeps trending in that direction starting tomorrow night.
As do I. So, no, thank you guys for the positive feedback, and thanks for having me on. I'm sure I'll talk to y'all again soon.
Sounds
Always.
Like
Thanks, Skylar. You will. No doubt about that. Skylar Meade, pitching coach of the Gamecocks. He actually texted me this morning and said, by the way, I meant to ask, how'd those steaks taste on Friday?
You knew you were grilling, right? You said that, but it was with the kids. So you went hot dog hamburger, right? Not steak.
Yeah, I just said they were good, and they probably weren't as good as that 14-inning marathon, but
probably not as good as sweeping the 5th-ranked team, but tasty.
That was that Friday night game was one of the reasons why baseball. I tweeted this: don't screw with it, don't mess with the time, and hey, look, man, that right there is what makes this game great.
Yeah,
I don't care that it was 5.5 hours long. That's fun.
It's well played. It's well played. You could feel the emotions on both sides. You could feel the energy from both dugouts. Yeah, that's what you want.
Got a lot of answers out of their club this weekend. Gamecocks are hot at the right time of year, 16-6, 4-2 in the league, and they've got Gardner-Webb tomorrow in Georgia coming up this weekend. It is time for a timeout. When we return, Wes Mitchell with Gamecock Central. He's going to pop in. The backstory on the future of Frank Martin is at least as much as he knows, and I think he knows more than many of us. So hang tight. The JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. We'll be right back.
Peace and love at Stokes Meet Up.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. Whatever you got planned this week, cancel it. 72 new Volkswagens will be sold in the next 72 hours at whatever price it takes. I repeat, 72 new Volkswagens will be sold in the next 72 hours. To the first 72 car buyers interested in saving up to $6,000 on a new Volkswagen for 3 days only. Every new Volkswagen and pre-owned vehicle at our bottom line price. Direct to the public, regardless of profit. Qualified purchases with interest-free financing for 60 months, and all trade-ins will be accepted. Interested parties should arrive early for best selection. You will not find a lower price anywhere in the country. 72-hour Volkswagen clearance, savings up to $6,000, 3 days only at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road or StokesVW.com.
Peace and love at Stokes Meet Up.
$16.66 per month per thousand borrowed for 60 months at 0% APR with 0 down plus tax. Tag includes $4.99.50 administration fee subject to VCI credit approval. Expires month end.
What's up, everyone? JB here. Want to tell you about my friends at McFadden Pest Control, as we do every day on our program. I love these guys. They've been in business over 40 years, and they treat our family like they've only been around for 4 days. Always doing their best work, trying to earn our business, although they know that they'll always have it. Heath and the guys take care of our quarterly, our mosquitoes, termite bonds, anything we can get them to do, they do it. They're the best. They're friends. Heath even often texts me and just asks to see how my family's doing. It's amazing. I can't say enough about McFadden Pest Control. Switch to them. You'll never have anyone else protect your home. McFaddenPestControl.com, McFaddenPestControl.com here in the Low Country.
Guys, spring is finally in the air. You know what that means. Basketball in its home stretch. March Madness promotion at Dog and Ducks, 3 locations in Mount Pleasant, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road. From now until the end of the tournament, $5 Sweetwater pints. That's right. Every Sweetwater, just $5 at Dog and Duck, Park West, Bell Hall, and their Clements Ferry location. Plus, baseball spring training, college baseball, spring football. It's all available at Dog and Duck's 3 locations in Mount Pleasant.
You were listening to the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online.
All right, 12:35 on this Monday, chilly, brisk, beautiful Monday afternoon in the Low Country of South Carolina, March the 29th, as we roll right into April. Happy Easter week, everybody. Darren Goldwater, Jamie Bradford here till 2 o'clock. Thanks to Skylar Meade joining us in that last segment. We've got David Cloninger coming up in a little while from San Antonio, Texas. We'll talk about tomorrow night's Elite Eight matchup between the Longhorns and the Gamecocks. But first, Gamecock Central's Wes Mitchell has been kind enough to pop on, as he generally does on Monday afternoons. What's going on, my man? How hope you had a good weekend. How you doing?
I'm good. I actually feel like Clowney today, just being too cool to hop on the video and only calling in. That's what Cloninger does every week.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, pretty much. It's okay. You've got things going on today. It's we'll give you a pass, but don't let it happen again.
That's right.
It will not happen again. I enjoy the video aspect, but I had to throw a little shade at Cloninger since I noticed he never hops on the video.
No, he doesn't, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on with him because I've noticed in a lot of these PCs he's not tapping the first question anymore. Did Steve Fink put in some new media rule that I don't know about?
Not that I'm aware of, but that is that's an excellent question. Maybe you can address that a little bit later on in your show.
I will.
The hard-hitting questions we all want to know. We will get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, we'll just get Fink on here and let him clear this up. Real quick here, some news out of the Big 12. Mike Boynton, of course, everybody has been mentioning his name for the last few weeks in regards to the future of South Carolina's hoops program, has agreed to a 7-year extension worth $3 million annually to stay with the Cowboys program. As noted by Matt Norlander, he was contacted by multiple power conference programs with openings to gauge interest, but is opting to stay in Stillwater. The school will officially announce the deal later on this afternoon. Wes, on Friday, you put out a lengthy report about the future of the program with Frank Martin. It does appear that he's going to hang on to his position, which is head coach of Gamecock basketball. Can you kind of recap Friday's, I'm going to call them events, but it's more like a timeline, what you were hearing, and then we'll kind of get into the nuts and bolts of the conversation in a minute, but kind of how things began to unfold, because it wasn't too long ago we were hearing a little bit of the opposite of this.
Yeah, how long do we have?
Yeah.
It is really hard to summarize, honestly, without feeling like I'm going to leave something out. But I'll do my best. Obviously, this was a situation where, there were a lot of conversations going on with the higher ups at South Carolina, both, involving Frank Martin in the room a lot of times, and obviously not involving Frank Martin at times, I think. So I think as this process played out, yes, there was a time, we reported it as well, that it seemed to be trending at one point towards there being a change. Now, how exactly that change was going to take place, what was the one thing we were all waiting to see, and we sort of said, hey, this is a fluid situation. It's fluid until it's not. And there were obviously some other programs that had interest in Frank Martin, and the conversations were continuing with South Carolina. I do want to say that there was a narrative that, as I think I think this was Friday. There's a narrative out there that Frank Martin is going to be back because the Board of Trustees does not want to pay a buyout. And that is not really the complete story. There's really, from everything I've gathered, y'all, there was not a consensus among the Board of Trustees. You know, the Board of Trustees is a group of people who all have their own opinions on the situation. So among the Board of Trustees, yes, there were, I'm sure, some people that did not feel it was correct to pay this $6+ million buyout. There were people that were much more neutral, sort of in the middle. And then there were people that believed, hey, it's time for a change, and the buyout is a cost of doing business. So that, I think a lot of what I see out there is an oversimplification, which is apparently a hard word to say, of a very complex situation. So, yes, there's a video floating around out there that obviously has played a big part of this as well. I'll direct people to go watch that video themselves, where a senator was sort of questioning President Caslin about finances at South Carolina and about how in years past the athletic department has indeed taken sort of their additional revenues from a year and given it back to the university. Now, the athletic department is not required to do that. Most years they do that, but we also have to remember an aspect of this is that this is a state-run university. They do have to answer to the legislator as far as their finances go, and the university itself is trying to build this brand new medical center, or medical school, I should say, to be accurate. And so there was an aspect here of the legislator being involved and always having some oversight over South Carolina's, South Carolina's books, basically, over the money from a university standpoint. So I actually think at some point, Chris Clark and I are going to try to write this out so that somebody can sit there and actually maybe have a more complete idea of what I'm trying to articulate to you right now. Because it's not something you can put in a singular tweet. It's not something, there's a lot of just depth to this entire situation that I believe is maybe lost on everybody. Ultimately, Frank Martin will be back. That's the complete expectation. He'll be back for this next season. And from what I understand, Frank Martin is confident that he can get it fixed. And, there's obviously been nothing official from the university yet, but I would imagine that that's going to come in the not so distant future.
Is it possible that the decision that we've now been led to believe will come won't, and that another reversal could happen just based on the way this whole thing has played out to this point?
I mean, in the realm of anything is possible, then I guess yes. But by all practical purposes, I would not expect a reversal at all. I think this is where we're headed. Even when it looked like it was headed the other way, it was still a fluid situation. There were still conversations being had. Obviously, like I said, nothing official from South Carolina yet. But I don't think we're going to be waiting that much longer. And important to remember that this we are still in interesting times. With COVID and the financials of the situation and the continuing conversations with Frank Martin and South Carolina that took place over the last couple of weeks. I think maybe all the circumstances involved is part of the reason that this extended out as long as it did. But I believe it's sort of in its very, very final stages that something will be official soon. I don't think this is a thing that's going to continue. There's going to be even more conversations throughout this week. I think it's pretty close to being final, if that makes sense.
Wes Mitchell, Gamecock Central. I think what people want to know is who supported keeping Frank Martin and who didn't. And I think people want to, I mean, whose job is this? Is this Coach Tanner's job to decide whether Frank Martin stays or goes? What is President Caslin's role? Where is the Board of Trustees in this? I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think anybody has any real answers. Maybe we'll get them, but I it's hard to have this conversation with you, and this has nothing to do with you. You could be John Smith. It doesn't matter who you are. You aren't any of those guys, so it's hard for you to speak on behalf of them. But based on what you know, do you know who supported keeping Frank Martin and who didn't support keeping Frank Martin?
Well, I have some ideas. I don't know if I'm willing to put my name on those at this point.
Sure.
I think, I think it's a situation where those folks can answer for it, and and maybe they will. Obviously, again, it's a very complex situation that and I think we have to remember there's a human element to all this as well. I think in this day and age, people want things to be, A and B, where, I mean, we were getting basically junk from some of our members 2 weeks ago saying, well, why won't you say that this is definitely going to happen? It's like, well, it's a fluid situation. Like there are human beings involved. There's an ebb and a flow. And, some people may have sort of thought Frank Martin should be out, but maybe they don't feel as strongly about it. Maybe there are other people that thought Frank Martin should be out and felt very strongly about it. There's other people that are more neutral towards it. So, if I don't really feel comfortable just based on saying, hey, this guy feels this way, this guy feels that way, just based on, what I've heard. But maybe some people will want to sort of answer to that publicly at some point in this process.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously, Wes, I think that you and I and Darren, whoever, we're having this conversation on the surface. We haven't been involved directly in any of these talks, and just the way that it looks is that he's back because he's being forced to be back. Basically, that's the way it looks. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, I have no proof necessarily of that. I just have what I've heard and what guys like y'all are reporting. Thank goodness for you. But that's what it looks like. It looks like, well, he's being forced to be back. And I at the end of the day, I have one question. Is that what's best for the program or not? Because even though, like, if you ask me my personal opinion, Jamie, what's your personal opinion? Well, I think Frank Martin should be the coach of South Carolina. I've thought that all along. I think he deserves at least another year to get this thing figured out. But where it's gotten to the point that it's gotten with all this junk that this decision has gone through to get made or to be made, I don't know that that's the best thing for the program. I don't know that that's the best thing for Frank Martin.
Well, and I think it is also important, something I also think has been lost in all this. It's important to point out that Frank Martin wants to be at South Carolina. Mm-hmm. So I think that was lost along the way, maybe in translation, or maybe it was just sort of there was so much else going on that Frank Martin wants to be at South Carolina. He thinks that he can fix it at South Carolina. He doesn't think that the program is necessarily in as bad a shape as the record, indicated this past season, that the program as a whole, that it can be fixed. So I think, again, there's sort of been, I don't know if it's a narrative, but just a thought process or sort of underneath the surface of all this, it was lost that, yes, there was talk about Frank Martin in other schools. There was talk about, South Carolina getting rid of Frank Martin. But ultimately, Frank Martin does want to be at South Carolina. He is committed to South Carolina. So, and the reason that popped in my mind was, I think your question was he's back because he's forced to be back. On Frank Martin's end, he's not being forced to be back. He wants to be back. Obviously, you can make an argument clearly. I mean, at this point, y'all, it's not a secret. There are clearly some people at the University of South Carolina that don't want Frank Martin back. Mm-hmm. So, yes, it is a split room, I guess you would say. And but right now, the side of the room that wanted Frank Martin back is going to win out at this point.
You know, when you look back, you've been covering this program for a long time. You've been covering this athletics department for a long time, and this is not the first coaching change we've ever seen. Matter of fact, we just saw one in football. But prior to that, you know, President Caslin at one point in time had I would say stepped over the line a little bit and saying some things publicly that probably should have been kept in the back pocket. You know, and years past, you know, Coach Tanner has made coaching changes around here. Eric Hyman has made coaching changes, hirings and firings. Mike McGee. It appears these last, well, not the change itself with Beamer, but a lot that led up to the change. There was some fumbling and bumbling out there, and here we are again. And is there a common denominator in this? Is there a reason why all of a sudden in the last year or so we've seen some confusion from the athletics department, the University of South Carolina, and what is the best path forward and how you keep it clean and crisp in these type situations? How do you assess how this has been handled over the last year or so, both football and basketball?
Yeah, I think it's a valid question. I think it's partially up to the fans to evaluate that, to take the information. You know, it's ultimately their program. They're the ones who donate to it, and it's up to them to decide. I think if these things are handled well or not. I think, you know, some of this is kind of the whole thing of do you really want to know how the sausage gets made, if that makes any sense. You're always going to have, if you have a group of people, nobody's ever going to everybody completely agree on the course of action. So I think in this case, it's just played out maybe a little bit more publicly, you know, than you would want, which I think is something that hurts the program because, you know, everybody, I won't say everybody, but a lot of people now know that there are some people at South Carolina that don't believe Frank Martin should be your basketball coach. I think the key, though, moving forward is if you're going to bring Frank Martin back, which obviously they are, you have to find a way to support him in every single way possible. I think one thing the fans have a point on is how much have you marketed the men's basketball program since the Final Four? Have you done every single thing you can do to market that program? And I think that's got to be the key moving forward. I think you know, communication with the higher ups and Frank Martin, and communication from Frank Martin to the higher ups about, you know, what he believes can be done to better market this program. I think gone are the days where, you know, we see it on the football side. It's outstanding. Gone are the days where just going out there and putting a team on the field or on the court is all you need to do and just win and it's fine. No, you got to go above and beyond to market the programs on social media and do different things to put the best aspects of your program out to the public. So to me, now it becomes, y'all, it doesn't matter if you were one of the people who didn't want Frank Martin back. That doesn't matter anymore. He's coming back, so everyone has to pull in the same direction, right, and find the best way to try and fix this thing. That would be my big takeaway moving forward is, you know, can everybody in the athletic department and at the university do everything they can to try and help get this program moving forward?
Just a couple of minutes left, Wes, and we'll let you move on here, brother. And I agree with you. I think the right thing to do actually is treat this like a brand new hire. Turn the page, treat it like a new hire, you know, re-engage your marketing department, re-engage your roster, your coaching staff. Treat this like, look, we're starting fresh. We're starting from scratch, same name, but you're going to have to treat it that way in order to move forward and try to create a different vibe around the program, because right now it's not good. Moving forward, though, what do you anticipate? What should we expect to look for over the next couple of days as they as they, I guess, rework the contract? Are we looking for extensions? Are we looking for decreases in buyouts? I know Keyshawn Bryant has opted to the NBA draft. However, he did not hire an agent, so the door is wide open for him to come back to South Carolina. But that's a roster issue. What are we looking for with Frank Martin in the next couple of days in anticipating how this is going to look like and go forward?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Jamie. I don't know the specifics on the contract, but I would imagine, we'll call it an educated guess, I would imagine at some point you're talking about making an announcement, extending the number of years, another year or two, but ultimately sort of lowering the buyout in the process and making it more. Essentially, at that point, it becomes more of an incentive-based contract. It's a situation where if Frank Martin and the basketball team can sort of get back on a better path, then he stays, makes his money, and everything's good to go. Whereas if things go as they did this past season, then you're in a situation from a university standpoint where you can make a change and it's not going to cost the full $6 million. So right now the contract is essentially, the buyout is 100% of the contract. So essentially what they would have done if they'd gotten rid of them, you'd have been paying them $6 million to go away basically. Whereas that's $3 million plus for the next 2 seasons. So instead of paying it now, you're paying $3 million for him to coach the team next year as opposed to go away essentially. So that would be my guess. Extend it in numbers, but rework in number of years, but rework the actual financials of the contract. That to me, that's really the only thing at this point that makes sense.
Wow. Just a wild time right now with this situation. Hopefully it all works out for the best for Frank Martin and the University of South Carolina. Wes, we'll let you run on that note. Believe it or not, folks, they are still in the middle of spring practice. We didn't get to any of that with Wes, but they've got you covered
today. Wow.
Yeah. Is there anything not going on right now? I mean, this is wild times. Chris Wellbaum's got a great notebook up on the women's basketball program. Of course, they're in the Elite Eight, and they'll play tomorrow night. There's everything that you could possibly imagine covered. Colin, of course, covering the baseball program sweep all weekend in Florida. So head to GamecockCentral.com for that and much, much more. Wes, thank you so much, my friend. Have a wonderful afternoon. I know that you're about to hop on some Zoom calls with the players. We'll look forward to following up on that, and we'll talk to you next week.
Hopping on with the coaches.
Yeah, the coaches, yeah.
We'll have coverage for that on GamecockCentral.com. And I got to say, man, Chris Wellbaum, the job he does covering women's basketball, I think is unmatched. So if you've got some South Carolina women's basketball listeners and watchers on your show, all of his women's basketball content is actually free. So nice. I hope everybody will come check that out on Gamecock Central. But, man, appreciate y'all. Y'all have a good one, okay?
You too. Yes, sir. You too. Thank you. There you go. Wes Mitchell with Gamecock Central. He's right. Chris does a wonderful job covering the women's basketball program. It is a situation, that's for sure, in Columbia, South Carolina. I got more thoughts on this, but we do need to hit a timeout. We'll take a drive around the rest of the state and what happened this weekend in college baseball as well. Also college football. Let you know kind of what's going on at the FCS level. They're only 3 weeks away from the playoffs, believe it or not. And we'll give you a quick update there. This investment going on in Nashville, we're going to tell you about that with Vanderbilt. It's a big one, biggest ever for their athletics department, as a matter of fact. And then David Cloninger is set to join us at 1:20 this afternoon, live from San Antonio. Speaking of women's basketball, the Gamecocks in Texas play tomorrow night, and he's going to give us an update on what that looks like. So hang tight. The JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen, is going to hit a quick timeout. The National Anthem up next, and we'll return for hour 2. We'll be right back. What's up, everyone? JB here. Want to tell you about my friends at McFadden Pest Control, as we do every day on our program. I love these guys. They've been in business over 40 years, and they treat our family like they've only been around for 4 days. Always doing their best work, trying to earn our business, although they know that they'll always have it. Heath and the guys take care of our quarterly, our mosquitoes, termite bonds, anything we can get them to do, they do it. They're the best. They're friends. Heath even often texts me and just asks to see how my family's doing. It's amazing. I can't say enough about McFadden Pest Control. Switch to them. You'll never have anyone else protect your home. McFaddenPestControl.com, McFaddenPestControl.com here in the Low Country.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risk their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Cloninger, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
Bourbon and whiskey drinkers of Charleston. Paddock and Whiskey on James Island and the Terrace Shopping Center on Maybank is your home for the finest and rarest bourbon and whiskey drinks in the Low Country. This is where I hang out. Go meet my friends Reed and Chris and try one of their exclusive barrel pick bourbons. They have the largest private barrel collection in the state, and let their knowledgeable staff recommend your next pour. PaddockandWhiskey.com. Let not your heart be troubled. Paddock and Whiskey is here for your next double. We're all friends around here. Paddock and Whiskey, proud partners of the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Low Country. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit StonoFerryGolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. StonoFerryGolf.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Cloninger, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the National Anthem.
Live, loud, and online.
Final hour on this Monday afternoon. Welcome back. The JB and Goldwater Show, protected by McFadden Pest Control. McFaddenPestControl.com to make sure that you are protected by the mosquitoes, and they are coming. We do have a cool down coming up at the end of the week, but after that, guess what? Here they come.
They're back.
Yep, they're back. McFaddenPestControl.com for that, for quarterly pest control service, for your termite bonds, and much, much more. In business over 40 years. McFaddenPestControl.com. If you're watching, JB, to the right of the screen there, to the left, that is Darren Goldwater. We've got an hour in the books and an hour to go. Thanks to Skylar Meade and Wes Mitchell for joining us previously. Coming up at 1:20, David Cloninger with the Post and Courier, live from San Antonio, Texas. Across all social media platforms at JB and Goldwater, individually at Sports Media JB, and at Darren Goldwater. Marcus Satterfield and Clayton Whiter meeting with the media right now. That's who Wes was referencing, so we'll keep our eyes on that as well. If there's anything of note to pass along, we will certainly do that here in the next few minutes. Real quick, kind of drive around the state this weekend, Darren, and let you know what happened on the Diamond. We all know about South Carolina's sweep over Florida. That was really the major national news in college baseball. But in South Carolina, CSU took the trip up to Clinton, and they came home only scoring 2 runs and were dealt 3 losses. Now 7-10 on the year, 7-7 in the Big South. What a weekend for PC getting that sweep. Up next, the Buccaneers will host High Point in an interesting series. Thursday, double dip Friday. It is Easter weekend coming up, so if you want to watch CSU play baseball, you better get over there on Thursday or one of those 2 that they'll play in North Charleston Friday afternoon. The College of Charleston took 2 of 3 this weekend from UNC Wilmington. They are now 7-11 overall, 4-2 in the CAA. That is the best record in the league, by the way. They won Saturday and Sunday, scored 21 runs while doing so. They needed to. That offense had been scuffling, but Coach Holbrook and the Cougs got it going. Again, 7-11 now. The Citadel 8-12, just 1-4 in the SoCon. They lost 2 this weekend at Western Carolina up in Cullowhee. The Saturday game was canceled due to inclement weather. They've got Mercer in a 3-game set at home down at the Joe starting on Friday, and then a double dip on Saturday this weekend. No Sunday game, of course, per SoCon rules. Clemson this weekend had a pretty good one, and they've been rolling right along. A sweep of Boston College, and now are 12-9 overall, 6-6 in the ACC. They've got Georgia tomorrow. The Dogs and Tigers will play on the ACC network, so you'll be able to watch that if you are a Clemson fan. And then they'll hit the road for Raleigh. NC State in a 3-game series coming up this weekend. 5 in a row now that Clemson has won. By the way, their RPI, let me make sure that I've still got this somewhere around here in my notes, is at 26. 26. So the Tigers playing much better, Darren, but they also have a top 30 RPI, which is, of course, great news. Coastal Carolina is playing actually right now in the final game of a 4-game series against Louisiana. I'll check that score here in a moment, but they've lost 2 of 3 thus far to the Cajuns on the road in Lafayette, 9-2, 5-3. The losses Friday and Sunday. They did win Saturday. Coastal 14-8, just 1-2 in the Sun Belt. App State will head to Conway coming up this weekend. In football this weekend, we mentioned Friday, it was a big week. Clinton, South Carolina, not just because CSU was there, but how about San Diego came all the way across the country to play some football, and they won 24-21 over Presbyterian. San Diego is undefeated. PC drops to 1-3. CSU took on Monmouth this weekend, and they lose 35-17, now 0-2 in their spring season. And it's as far back as I can remember, this is the worst loss I've seen at Johnson-Haygood Stadium, 55-7. The Dogs, honestly, it seems like have all but given up. Sanford is 3-3. Citadel's 0-9, Darren. They look terrible, and they look disinterested.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And look, if you're at that point here in the spring, it's hard to say what's left to play for. You know, you're not going to the playoffs. You haven't won a game going back to the fall. It's add COVID into all of it. Imagine what they've dealt with and then not being able to find any success for all the work they've put in, the sacrifice. If I was in that locker room, yeah, you'd have to imagine that there are the fair share of kids in there saying, what's the point? You know, let's finish this thing up. You hope that's not the case, but it's, I mean, human nature. It's inevitable.
It's sad right now. It's sad. This team was playoffs just a few years ago, and it's been a struggle, no doubt. We'll see what that means for the future of the program. VMI, by the way, 5-0 now. A high-scoring affair up in Spartanburg this weekend. They take down Walford 36-31. Terriers now just 1-3 in the spring season. But the Keydets are 5-0, and they are ranked 10th in the country.
It's amazing. I mean, I don't remember, and I have followed the Southern Conference now for 20 years, really, since I've been down here. I don't remember VMI ever having a team like this. I mean, it's the exact opposite script for the Citadel. It's rare for the Citadel, but it happens every now and then. VMI, it almost never happens that their football team is, let alone competitive, but dominant. Their basketball team was really good at home this year, too. Good time up there.
It's remarkable. Yeah, they're playing incredibly well. They are the highest-ranked SoCon team. Furman is the second highest-ranked team at number 21. About 3 weeks left in the regular season as well in FCS football, and then we'll get into the playoffs, and we'll see if the TV cameras pay attention to that because they haven't paid attention to anything else as far.
Now, they're picking up some, and you're not going to see a lot, but you will see more than you have seen.
Thanks to everybody who participated in this weekend's open house at Wando Power Equipment. It is Power Hour on our program. Final hour of the JB and Goldwater show daily is powered, guaranteed powered by Wando Power Equipment. Head to wandopower.com Untitled.com. They, from what I understand, sold out basically of that incredible deal, the Hustler commercial mowers. You can still get them, but you won't get them at 20% off, and you're going to have to wait a little bit until they come in. But of course, they're always open for business, and they've got everything and anything you could possibly imagine, whether it's being like me and Darren, going out and doing your own yard work, cutting grass, weed eating, and things like that, or you've got a landscaping company and you need to go get a zero turn, or you need a trailer, or you need to rent an aerator. Maybe it's aeration time. Head to wandopower.com, check out their prices, give them a call, talk to Polk, talk to Harrison. They've been doing this a long time. Their family has had this business for now 30 years on Daniel Island. wandopower.com. Find them on Facebook as well. The Price family, they're like family to me. And matter of fact, I went to high school with these guys, so I've known them a long, long time. Blowers, mowers, weed eaters, you name it, it's there. They power the outdoors at Wando Power Equipment, and they certainly, of course, power our program. Vanderbilt has stepped up in a big, big way, Darren. This is, look, I know that Vanderbilt has long been, and rightfully so, the afterthought of the SEC when it comes to athletics departments. Although they have had their years in basketball, and they certainly have one of the top 2 or 3, depending on who you ask, top 5 programs in the country in college baseball. There is no doubt about that. But now it appears that they are getting serious about trying to get the football program turned around as well. It is an athletics-wide $300 million campaign in which they quietly began this back in the fall, and they've already, quote, identified, which means the contracts are not necessarily signed, but they've already identified 2/3 of that money. About $200 million has been essentially earmarked for the Vanderbilt athletics department. This is the largest investment effort we've ever seen out of Nashville, and rightfully so. They're in Nashville, for goodness sakes. It's a wonderful university. Here's what they plan to build: a brand new football operations building. Of course, we all know what goes into those these days, but they're planning to build one of those, which will be right there next to the ballpark. An expanded McGugin Center. The renovation will benefit all teams, and it will include a new sports performance center, an indoor football practice facility with a full-length field, an outdoor next to the outdoor practice fields, a basketball ops center, and then upgraded experiences for the fans inside of Vanderbilt Stadium, talking about suites and things of that nature. So they've got a lot of projects that they're about to start. The rendering should be out this summer, and they should begin at the conclusion of the 2021 football season on the ops center for football and the ops center for basketball. So over $300 million being invested into Vanderbilt athletics. And again, as I mentioned, long been the afterthought of the league. But if you get serious about it, any sport can win at Vanderbilt, dude. I know it's a hard school to get into, but they're in Nashville. Yep. I mean, it can be done, and it looks like finally they're putting their best foot forward.
Yeah, and that's what you just said. It can be done. You bring a recruit into Nashville. It is, personally speaking, one of my favorite cities in this country.
No doubt.
High on the list of, if I'm ever not in Charleston, Nashville would be high on the list. But now they're finally putting money into the facilities. It's a game you have to play to keep up with what's happening around the country, and they haven't been playing it. So, yes, if you can't get recruits in and liking what they see, it's already tough to get kids into Vanderbilt. Now at least you can give them something else. Now you can at least put in front of them, hey, it might not be here tomorrow, but by the time you're out of here, hopefully one of these buildings will be able to help you out and then get the recruiting rolling that way. Remember, it's a very new basketball staff there. It's a brand new football staff there. You know, baseball can always use a little bit of a upgrade to their facilities, so it's going to help them.
Oh, their baseball field's a dump. They need to put more money into that. I know that they've done it over the years. It used to be even worse. But, yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. And, you know, for folks that wonder, well, do facilities actually really help somebody? Okay, well, let me just say this. Take 10 football players and walk them onto campus at Vanderbilt, qualifiers, guys who can get into school, good players, and then take those same 10 and walk them onto campus at South Carolina, and you tell me how many of those 10 are going to pick Vanderbilt over South Carolina. Do that with Ole Miss, do it with Mississippi State, do it with Tennessee, do it with anybody else in this league. Forget Alabama LSU and Georgia. That's a different brand of athlete right now. I'm talking about like the core of the league, the blue collar guys.
Yep.
If you want to be a blue collar dude, walk them on campus at Vanderbilt, walk them on campus at Kentucky, and you tell me how many of those 10, all right, these are only 2 schools I get to choose. How many of them are going to pick Vanderbilt? And I promise you 7 out of 10 of them at least are going to pick the other school. They're not going to Nashville.
Right. Is a building or multiple facilities, does that win you a recruiting battle? No. But if you don't have them, it loses the battle, right? That is a guarantee right now, because if you're not keeping up with everybody else, then you look like a dump. And then you're comparing everything else, and all this stuff over here is great, and then I'll just put Vanderbilt over there. So it's not going to win you something, but it'll lose you a recruiting battle.
I mean, it's like it's you know what it is? It's a sign of how much do you care about me. That's what a lot of these kids think about these days. They walk in, they're like, oh man, they really care. They put an arcade in here. Holy moly. They go to Vanderbilt and like, where's your arcade? Or what?
Right.
You know, where's the locker that has the automatic reclining seat in it? What are you talking about? You're here to get an education and play football. No, I need a PlayStation in my locker. I mean, that's what a lot of this has come down to.
Yeah.
And they've convinced these kids that we care more because we do all of this.
Because we spend more money, so we care more. I mean, it's like an old school parenting hack. If I'm not being good enough dad, then I'll just keep buying the kid something, and the kid's going to like me, right? It's the same general idea right there. And for Vanderbilt, it comes almost out of the blue because we see what Vanderbilt cuts. That's it feels like a regular news story. Every couple of months, something else is cut. Like they axe basically their entire sports information department. It feels like they're pulling money and pulling money and pulling money. And now all of a sudden, bam, here we go. Here's $300 million that we're trying to find to put back in.
Yeah, it's baffling what they've done. You can't cut a sports information department in 2020, man. I mean, that's geez Louise.
No.
Anyways, moving on. We do have David Cloninger coming up here in just a moment. I want to give my quick thoughts on this Frank Martin situation too. Look, I know a lot of what's gone on. The people that I've talked to, their information is pretty good information. Now, when I say I know, I think I know. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know. Oh yeah, I know everything. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I seemingly know what's happening here. At the end of the day, when you just cut through the mess, forget about all this crap. Senators and BOT members and all this crap. Is Frank Martin the right coach for the program or not? Period. I don't want to have any other conversation. Is he the right coach or not? That's it. That's all. That's the only question that needs to be asked. If the answer is yes, then you need to keep him. If the answer is no, then you need to get rid of him, because it's fair to Frank Martin and it's fair to the program. If I'm Frank, I don't want to be at a place where nobody wants me. Yep. I know that. Number one, I just don't want that. Number two, that's kind of going to hurt me for the future. I mean, this is like recruiting for him is about to be way more difficult than it has been. Can you imagine what's coming out there? I mean, this is going to be really hard for him to wade through these shark-infested waters of recruiting right now with all of this nonsense that's made itself public. It's a joke. Now, if you ask my personal opinion, Frank, do you think Frank Martin should be the coach of South Carolina? I've said this for weeks. Yes, I do. I think next year should be the we'll figure it out.
Make or break.
Yeah, you're either here or you're not here. This conversation probably should have even been had this year, but of course it was inevitable that it was going to be when they started going down the crapper. But with you go back, I'm not placing blame on anybody or anything like that, because I don't know who deserves blame and doesn't deserve blame, if anybody does or doesn't. I don't know that answer necessarily, because there are a lot of different dynamics. But to not bury my head in the sand about this and not be naive, in the South specifically, but not exclusively, this happens all over the country, Penn State, Ohio State, Southern Cal, UCLA. There are politics involved in major athletics departments. Always have been, always will be. They're not going away. When you have state-supported institutions, people are going to try to pull strings and cut corners behind the scenes to get what they want.
Yep.
And you don't ever know what those reasons are for or anything like that. You got to be essentially in politics to know what they are. So this isn't new. This happens. But the issue is it's public. That's the problem. And when it becomes public, then you have an identity crisis, essentially. And that's what this has come down to for South Carolina. And so I just hope that what's about to happen is best for all parties involved, because I respectfully, as a man, think the world of Frank Martin. And of course, certainly want what's best for the University of South Carolina and their basketball program. But we've seen some major bugaboos over the last, I'd say, year plus, and that crap needs to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know who stops it and how they plan on doing it, but you can't have these private conversations in public. You just can't do it. You got to be able to make decisions and move on. Fans are fans. They're going to deal with it. But I think it's become a joke what they've turned a lot of this into for a lot of different reasons. But I'll tell you what isn't a joke, and that's Dawn Staley's women's basketball program. They are really, really good. And David Cloninger is right there in the locker room with them. I think he just got done polishing up Dawn's shoes for practice today, and they've got Texas tomorrow. What's up, DC? Live from San Antonio.
Oh, come on, man. I mean, you still got me at polishing shoes. I'll have you know I've graduated to holding the spit bucket. Thank you very much.
Ooh. Congratulations.
Yeah. Give credit where it's due.
Did you take your broom with you to San Antonio in anticipation of the baseball team sweep this weekend?
No, I didn't. But that was pretty impressive to see. Not only that they pulled it off, but the fashion that they did. Especially on Friday, and then it's just a thing of where baseball is always a cyclical sport. You come out doing real well, you're going to have a slump. You're in a slump, you're going to do real well. So it's good to see that that's come back around again, and now they just need to sustain it. Coming into this 3-series stretch of Texas, Vanderbilt, Florida, I think they even said it on the program, you're probably going to be lucky to win 2 of those. Well, they ended up winning 4, meaning they lost 5, and you're certainly not going to celebrate that. But when you won the last 4 in a row and you're 4-2 in the league, yeah, okay, you can take that. So they're playing real well. They got a lot of confidence, and got a game against Gardner-Webb tomorrow night, and then go down to Athens to play the Bulldogs.
I tell people this all the time. It's baseball. You cannot get too high and too low with each pitch. You can't get too high and too low with each inning or each game. And I'll tell you what, DC, we were talking to Skylar earlier that I want to get into Dawn with you, and then we'll talk with some Frank, and we'll let you go back to cleaning out the locker room. What I didn't get to say this to Skylar, but you've spent enough time around him, Coach Lake, and Coach Kingston, and Tripp, that whole program. They're very, very, very even keeled, and they could win 20 in a row, and it's like they acknowledge it, but they got to go out and play the next one. They could lose 20 in a row. They acknowledge it. They got to go play the next one. And I think what we have seen over the last 5 games, this 5-game winning streak in which they've defeated 4 top 5, or four of those 5 wins have been against top 5 programs in Florida and Vanderbilt. We've seen that mentality, that characteristic rub off on the program. And that's the best thing you could have in this sport, especially in this league.
Well, it is, Jamie. I know that, we're all enjoying it when they're using $5 words and toting around the plastic scythe and everything. And that's all great when you win. It's just when you're losing it, it becomes a distraction. People say, well, you need to put away those childish things and get back to winning. Well, it's all part of it. And, this team knew how good it was. And even though it lost 6 straight, it was like, you played some pretty good teams, and it's just not bouncing your way right now. But it has turned around. There's a lot of season left, but, standing there right now, you look at it and say, this is a postseason team. And that shouldn't change. So that's what you want to be. And, you can be a lot better than that, but you can only go play them 1 game at a time. So that's what they got to go do. And, they're in perfect position to do that. They come in with a load of confidence after sweeping one of the best teams in the country.
There's no question. Just to put it in perspective, folks, they lost 2 of 3. They were no hit against Vanderbilt. They beat Vanderbilt. They also lost to Davidson. They swept Florida. That's baseball. That's college baseball. It's happening all over the country, and hopefully South Carolina can keep winning 5 in a row. They're going to try to make it 6 tomorrow night at 7 o'clock against Gardner-Webb at Founders Park. All right, DC, give us an update from San Antonio. Tomorrow night it's 6th-seeded Texas and top-seeded South Carolina from the Alamo Dome on ESPN. But in saying that, Dawn Staley and the Lady G's are going to see a very familiar face in Vic Schaefer in his first year as a head coach at Texas. Of course, they upset Maryland this weekend. What does that mean, old Vic Schaefer? By the way, Dawn is 12-3 against Coach Schaefer in her career.
Well, first of all, Jamie, you got to get out of this Lady Gamecocks mentality, okay? I'll tell you what I once was told when I used that term. Do you see lady written anywhere on that uniform?
I'm sorry.
They're the Gamecocks, all right? Not the Lady Gamecocks. They're the Gamecocks. I know that they're the Lady Vols and the Lady Texters and the Lady Dogs, but they are not the Lady Gamecocks. They're just the Gamecocks, all right?
Okay.
Now that we've got that established.
It was a huge upset last night, but, that's what you come to expect from a Vic Schaefer team. They will pull off a lot of that just because of how well they play defense. That's what they do. They know how to do it. They're very good at it. And, that's what enabled them to hold Maryland, the top scoring offense in the country, to over 30 points below their season average. So that's what they were able to do. And, for USC, you have to like that matchup, because I was thinking it was going to be Maryland saying, I don't know if they can beat them. I mean, every one of those Terrapins can shoot it. They love to shoot it. And I just don't know if USC is going to be able to match that. Well, now it's not it's not a consideration. And not only do you get to play Vic Schaefer, who, as you mentioned, Dawn Staley is 12-3 against him. Dawn Staley is 5-0 against him when they've had to win, as in when a ring is on the line. And a ring is most certainly on the line when you're playing for a Final Four berth. So it could be a lot worse, is what I'm saying. It's going to be a tough matchup, but you have to look at history here and say, okay, you got to play Vic Schaefer with the championship on the line? Bring it.
Absolutely. Well, and Dawn's girls, they played pretty good defense themselves, DC. They've not given up over 70 points since the loss to Tennessee up in Thompson Bowling Arena a few weeks ago. Is there a magic number in this game offensively for South Carolina? If they get to 65, if they get to 70, something that you feel like is a comfortable offensive number for them to be able to hold on and move on?
Yeah, it'll be one more point than Texas scores, so whatever that number can be. So, I don't know. I mean, it's probably always going to be a low-scoring game when Vic is involved. I mean, that nickname, the Secretary of Defense, is not likely earned. He knows what he's doing defensively, so it is going to be tough. But the main thing is, I look at Texas and matchup, and they run through their 6'5" All-American center in the post, and that's exactly what South Carolina does. So it's going to be a very similar-looking matchup. I'm sure Vic is designing game plans to stop Aaliyah Boston, just like Dawn is designing game plans to stop Charlie Collier. But it will be an interesting matchup. Just got to go out there and play it and see who's going to be called the best at the end of tomorrow night.
How do you assess what you've seen in the postseason thus far out of the Gamecocks? I mean, there was a couple of games ago, I think they were DC like 1 of 13, maybe 14 from long range, and then they hit a bunch of them yesterday against Georgia Tech. I think 8 of 14 in that ball game, and I don't know. Obviously, this team tries to work from the inside out. They try to go down low and just pound them, and let Boston and those girls do their things. But at the same time, it seems like game in and game out, if they've got a transition to do something different, they'll do it. How do you assess their run thus far to where they've gotten here in the Elite Eight?
Well, they haven't had a lot of the problems that they had earlier in the year. They've been mostly making their layups. They haven't had really a major defensive adjustment. And they've mostly just been taking care of their business. I mean, it's kind of like Dawn Staley said yesterday. Obviously, when shots go in, you look a lot better than you maybe really are. But we're going to do that. So they have been shooting the ball well, and that's from all over the floor. Yesterday, I was saying, man, you just don't know what you're going to get with this team, because Zia Cook's been streaky and she's had some slow starts. They really don't get anything from their bench. Well, yesterday, Aaliyah Boston scoreless in the first half. Zia Cook comes out and nails her first 3 shots, and they go to their bench early, and they get 16 points from it in just the first half. So it's always good to see that you can have something a little different this time of year, because normally at this point, Jamie, you are what you are, and you're not going to do anything hugely different from what got you here. But that was definitely different yesterday. So, you look to see more of the same tomorrow night against Texas.
David Cloninger with the Post and Courier, 1:30 on this Monday afternoon. But it's 12:30 there because he's in Texas, San Antonio, to be exact. The site of tomorrow night's Elite Eight matchup between the Longhorns and the Gamecocks on ESPN at 7 o'clock. What have you learned? We've talked to Debbie Antonelli I've talked to her for years about this, DC. I want to say probably 3 or 4 years, but Darren and I over the last year have had multiple conversations with Debbie about building a bigger stage for women's basketball. She's referenced in the past trying to get the Sweet 16 to Las Vegas. Obviously, this year the whole tournament has been in where you are now, that San Antonio area. What have you learned about trying to put this under essentially one roof or within one air circumference type area to be able to help build the brand of women's basketball?
Well, that's always going to have its advantages and its disadvantages. I mean, you would have to put it in a destination city, and you would probably have to keep it there for a number of years just to see what, the impact would be. Debbie has always suggested Las Vegas, which I think is a great idea because Vegas is a destination city. You always want to go there, but you don't really want to stay there for a week at a time. So it lends yourself to having a weekend or 4 days where you can go out there and watch a couple of basketball games in between hitting the casinos, going to Hoover Dam, seeing a show, everything else you can do in Vegas before you pack up and come home. So, they're always kicking around those ideas. But I think in terms of the immediate impact, just because we've been going through COVID and it's affected the finance of so many schools, they're probably going to want to go back to the old way of doing things when we're all clear from the pandemic. And that's only going to benefit a certain number of schools, specifically the 16 that get to earn or host the first and second rounds, every year because they earn their way in. Those schools want that revenue, as they would. I mean, and, everybody's going to want that, and, you will have to earn your way to get that. But for a school like South Carolina, you definitely want to have those so you can replace some of that money. So you look at that, they've already formed out the regionals for the different 4 different city sites for the next few years. Next year's Final Four will be in Minneapolis as it's scheduled right now. So we'll see how it goes. But it's always going to be a talk, especially because the inequity and inequality of the women's game has been such a hot button topic this year, and they'll see what they could do. And of course, I understand what the NCAA is doing. They're taking care of their bell cow. They're taking care of the men's tournament, which makes the NCAA's money. I mean, that's 75% of the NCAA's operating revenue. But still, when it's so drastically different from the men and the women, you have to make sure you're at least attempting to be equal. And some of the disparities have been, frankly, ridiculous that we've seen over the past couple of weeks.
Well, that's interesting because I even had to change my thinking a little bit because, there are 2 points to be made with this. I think it was a couple days ago, the information that was released from the 19, I believe, tournament, and the fact that the women's tournament lost like $2.8 or $3 million. The men's made $900 million or something like that. But what folks have been trying to explain, I think this is what you were just talking about, right, is they're equal weights on the same bar. It's basketball is basketball. Quit separating the men and the women. It should just be the basketball budget. Is that a truthful statement? Is that kind of where this is going?
Well, that's what they hope. That's where they hope it will go. But the fact is that the NCAA, again, they make 75% of their operating revenue just off the TV rights to the men's NCAA tournament. It's not the basketball tournament. It's the men's tournament. So that's where, they have more money to spend for the guys, for the swag bags and all that kind of stuff. And you understand why, but you don't have to be happy about it. And when it's just put in your face, like it has been these past couple of weeks for the women with the weight rooms and those kind of disparities, that's where you get the problems. And of course, this day and age, if anybody's ever, gets their nose out of joint about the slightest thing, my tuna melt wasn't properly heated, well, they're going to put it on Twitter and everybody can read about it. So these are the kind of things that the NCAA has always been completely tone deaf about doing, but now they're being called on it. So, of course, Mark Emmert did a fine job, as he always does, of not addressing the problem at all and putting out, a 2,500-word salad that says absolutely nothing about what he's going to do. But that's what the guy does. The guy gets paid $2.7 million to look good in the suit and go up there and say exactly why he's terrible at his job. But, hey, he found a racket. Good for him. Fine. Just once he goes, I just hope he takes the organization with him.
Obviously, Dawn DC has as big of a platform to stand on as anybody. She might not be tall in nature. When you walk by Dawn, she's not towering over you, but her voice is rather large, and her platform is as big as her voice is. What's the dynamic like around Dawn Staley when you're in a tournament setting like this? How much time have you been able to just kind of be in the area and just see what type of impact she has on, everybody, other teams, other coaches, NCAA committee members, staffers of the Alamo Dome? What is it like when Dawn Staley walks into the arena?
Well, I can't really answer that for this year, Jamie, just because I'm not allowed, to be around and nobody is. That's the weird thing about covering this tournament. I'm so thankful to be here and able to watch the games and report and everything, but I can't be around the team like I normally would be. I can't go in the locker room, can't hang out with them at the hotel just because of everything that's going on. And I get that. That's just a product of this year that we're living in. From past experience, though, it's great how much of an impact she has, how many people know her, how many people she knows, and it goes from everywhere that she always treats everybody the same. She might meet, say George Raveling, and, tell him how much she respects him. She might meet a 6-year-old girl who's asking for her autograph, and she'll make that little girl feel like she's part of the team. She might meet a security guard, at the Alamo Dome, and she'll treat him like their long-lost buddy. So that's the kind of thing that she's always been able to do, is remove any kind of seeming barrier or non-barrier between her and the next person and make them feel like they're just catching up. So, that's always been the great thing about her, and that has not changed despite her using her voice to her advantage and to address some of the inequalities in the sport and in other areas, like we've seen the past year.
All right, DC, and finally, as it pertains to this tournament specifically, what have you, outside of South Carolina, kept your eyes on as you've assessed the other programs that are left in this tournament? Obviously, tonight you've got Baylor and UConn. We've seen UConn. Gamecocks lost to the Huskies earlier in the season. Indiana and Arizona are going to tip it late at 9 o'clock Eastern. Neither team has ever been to the Final Four in women's basketball. And then tomorrow, in addition to Carolina and Texas, you've got Louisville and Stanford. When you look at the other programs that are left, what type of roadblocks, if Carolina could get through Texas, are in their way in pursuit of another national championship?
Well, Jamie, there's 8 teams left, and all 8 of them could win this thing. That's the best thing about this year's tournament. A lot of times in the women's tournament, it's always been like, that team's going to win it. Usually it's been UConn, and before that, Tennessee. Or sometimes there's been a Baylor or a Stanford who you just knew was going to win the title at the end of the day. This year, you can't say that. I think every team left alive has as equal a chance to win it, because every team, has their superstars, has their great way of playing, and every team also has a key weakness that somebody else can exploit. So it is truly a great competitive tournament this year. It's not just going to end up with Gino Auriemma lifting another trophy, although it may. But there's a lot of good matchups here. And I'm glad to see that, that's another thing that's kind of hurt the women's game over the years. In the men's tournament, you see upsets all the time. That's why you have an Oral Roberts knocking on the door to go to the Elite Eight. That's why you have UCLA as a 11 in a play-in game, one step from the Final Four. The women's tournament, most all the time, the team with the most talent is going to win. Well, there's been a few more upsets this year, and that's good to see. Indiana knocked off NC State. Wright State beat Arkansas in the first round. And those are the kind of things that really help grow the interest. When you start to make it more, spread the parity around to make it equal as possible. So you look at this year's field, the rest of the teams that are in it, and say, any one of these teams could very easily win the national championship. And that's what makes the competition good. So we've seen some close games. I think that Baylor-UConn game tonight is really going to be a slobber knocker. So you just have to sit back and see where the cards fall. And then tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, South Carolina versus Texas. And we'll see who comes out of that one.
If Carolina can advance to the Final Four because of COVID restrictions, have you heard of any major faces or names from the university who might be trying to make the trip to San Antonio? Like, I don't know, Beamer or Frank or any of these guys going to try to go support him?
I'm sure it will be a consideration, but right now I think everybody's saying, "Hey, don't jinx it." We'll make those plans if we have to. They will have to be quick plans. Tomorrow night's Tuesday, and the Final Four game would be on Friday. So we'll see what happens. There's obviously limited capacity in the arena, but I'm sure that there will be quite a few, and quite a few of the higher ups who say, I think I might want to go out there. Let's get the university plane together, make sure everybody's tested, and let's go flying out to San Antonio. So We'll see how it goes.
I think the lasting image of Gamecocks supporting Gamecocks will always be Steve Spurrier in the box at Rosenblatt when the Gamecocks walked it off against UCLA. All right, I do want to ask you about Frank. Obviously, I know you're covering this from afar still. It's you've got a column right now that is up at postandcourier.com about the future of Frank Martin. It's still, quote, uncertain, although I think we all know where it's heading at this point. But over the last couple of days, I know you've learned a lot, but if you could kind of summarize that into a few quick paragraphs, if that's possible, and just give us a thought on God, DC, what on God's green earth is going on here?
All right. Well, the USC administration wanted Frank going. They gave him a couple of weeks to maybe look around for another job, trying to be gracious about it, which I certainly supported. But, they decided at the end of the day, with no jobs forthcoming, that they needed to make a change. They were going to make that change, but then the Board of Trustees objected. What was behind the Board of Trustees were some state legislatures, legislators, led by one state senator, Gerald Jackson, who brought it up very frankly to Bob Caslin that how can you be asking the state for $35 million to go to medical school when you're about to pay close to $20 to fire 2 coaches? And, of course, that's not the way it works, not in the real world, but he brought up a good point and basically implied that, if you make this move, maybe the state legislature will have to start thinking a little more about giving USC money for this project and this project and this project. So from that, the administration reversed their thinking, and the two sides are working on a contract extension. Now, before anybody freaks out and says, oh, why would you do that? It's like, look, it's going to be a contract extension that will add life to the deal, but it's also going to be the same exact buyout. So right now they're dealing with a 2-year buyout. It will remain a 2-year buyout, even though the deal will get extended. So it's not really promising anything that you haven't already promised. That said, okay, well, that could still happen. Well, maybe. I mean, I don't know if Frank's going to, who obviously knows all this, if he's going to want to work for a guy who knows that, who he knows doesn't want him there. There are still jobs to be had. This thing can still go a lot of different ways, Jamie. But right now, and we've seen this before, USC just can't do anything normally. They're kind of trending toward the NCAA, to which I've said a lot of times, they could screw up a glass of ice water. And this situation is that proverbial ice water. 2 weeks ago, they could have said, give me an ice water, and somebody could have brought it. Instead, somebody brought a blowtorch, and they decided to use it.
So let me ask you this. I if I put you on the spot here, just tell me, don't stop and don't ask a question. But you say work for a guy who doesn't want him there. I'm not taking that as Ray Tanner. I'm taking that as somebody else.
I'll say that the USC administration didn't want Frank there.
Okay.
Interpret that however you like.
Okay. Yeah, I think I don't know that you need to say any more than that. But it was worthy of a follow-up question. And I that's been my stance on this the whole time is if you're Frank Martin, how do you move forward? Why would you not want to be the Baltimore Colts and pack up in the middle of the night and drive off to coach dog sledding in Alaska? Forget it.
0.5 million reasons why. That's why. That's why he's not going to walk unless he's got something to go to. And you and I wouldn't either. 6.5 million, real good reasons why you're not going to do that.
What, David, what challenge does that I'm not talking about the record. I'm not talking about the record. He's got to put together a winning basketball team. What type of challenges does that present for him in the immediate future? This is going to start day one whenever this is done.
Well, it's going to be huge, Jamie. The fact is he knows he's not going to have near the same team he has this year. There will be a core of players he can build around, but he knows he's not going to have the guys who he leaned on last year. So that's going to be big to try to coach these guys up into becoming the stars and the leaders of next year's team. You're going to have to replace all the guys you lose. You certainly have a head start on that with 4 recruits committed, but you're also going to have to go play the transfer portal and see if you can get some immediate help. I don't think there's been any ultimatum given by anybody saying you better make the tournament next year or else, but they know. And he knows what has to happen. There has to be significant progress shown from this past year. So you look at that, and it's not a lame duck situation or anything like that, but he knows the stakes that are going to be there. And it's why it's not a guarantee, even though they're working on the contract extension, that he's going to come back next year. And if he does, it'll be because he finds a job that's, better suited for him. So this thing can still go a lot of ways. But the fact remains, look, you know what the buyout was when the season ended. You decided to go the route of giving him a couple of weeks, which I agree with. That was fine. But it also allowed all the other pro-Frank members, to mobilize and to put them in the situation that they're currently in. If you wanted to fire him, you should have done it 2 weeks ago. If you wanted to keep him, you should have expressed that 2 weeks ago and said, okay, we'll give you a contract extension, but the buyout is not going to change, which he may not have liked, but it's like, well, look, here's what you wanted. Now it's your decision. And he could have made up his mind whether to leave or stay or whatever. But they didn't do any of that. They waited till now, and now the situation's upon them. So they have to decide what they want to do. Frank has to decide what he's going to do. I personally think it doesn't matter what they do. The decision they seem to have made is given USC a little bit better chance to have a good season next year because you do have some returnees. And I happen to know that if Frank left, as in was fired, every one of those players would have left. Mm-hmm. Every single one. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens on that regard. It's obvious that there's a difference between them firing him and him leaving on his own accord in terms of the players staying or going. But there's still going to be an awful lot of turnover with this team. Yet they'll have a chance to do something next year, and it'll be a lot better chance than if you brought in somebody new and you had to reconstruct the entire roster. So we'll see what happens. But again, this situation could have been easily solved 2 weeks ago. But this is not how USC does things. They don't want to do things cleanly, and this is the latest example.
Unbelievable. It is. I would make sure to, all of you, make sure to head to thepostandcourier.com or pick up the paper if you've got it in your driveway and read David Cloninger's column that's in it now. And also to get yourselves caught up, just a couple of days ago, DC, I think it was you and Andy Shane, right, who pieced together that first initial column on this. Was that y'all on Friday?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And that was very detailed. I mean, if you want to get caught up, make sure that you read that. It's wonderful stuff. Hey, man, I know you're working hard. I'm sure that you're missing the wife and the well, not newborn anymore. My gosh, what is this, a year old now?
He's a year old now, but it's not easy. But no. When duty calls, I salute smartly and then charge up the hill. So we'll see what happens. But it's like I was talking to her last night. Well, I don't think you should worry about it. I don't think they got a chance of beating Maryland, so I should be home on Wednesday. She said, okay. So, of course, she wakes up this morning and says, liar. I'm like, I can't help it. The Texas decided to show up. But what makes it worse, tomorrow's her birthday.
Oh.
And I'm in.
But here's the good news. And maybe she can take solace in this. When you have a young one at home and you're traveling, at least one of you gets to sleep. Now, it's unfortunate it's not her, but at least one of you gets to sleep.
No, and that's true. Her mother's coming into town today to stay with her, so at least she'll have an extra hand.
There you go.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I'm missing him pretty hard.
Well, bring them some Circes from the Alamo Dome, and all will be good, my friend. You'll be all right. Hey, thank you. So, what's that?
I said I'll do what I can.
Or the Alamo. Not forget the dome. Go to the actual Alamo and carve out some little brick or something. Take that with you. I'm sure that'll be fun.
Yeah, sure. And after I get back from 10 years facing Federal Monument, I'll be able to introduce
That's
myself.
nothing.
No problem.
Have you not paid attention over the last year, DC? This is happening everywhere, man. It's no big deal.
Oh, right. No. That's just brick and steel. It can't hold DC.
Yeah.
Oh man, hey,
never say that to a state trooper.
that's right. Hey, great stuff, man. It was a great weekend for the Gamecocks. I know you were happy to be able to report on all those wins for the basketball team and the baseball team, and hopefully it continues to trend that direction. Have a wonderful time down there in San Antonio. Nobody better to cover this thing than you, certainly. And let Dawn know, hey, look, you're there. You might as well just go win the whole thing. So just don't come home early. We'll see you in April.
I'm sure she's counting on that, but I appreciate you guys having me.
See ya.
Always, buddy. Thank you. There you go. David Cloninger with the Post and Courier on Twitter at DC PNC. And I don't know what you took from that conversation, but I took from that pretty blunt. And obviously he's not going to speak that way unless he's got some truth behind it. So
right. Yeah. I mean, that's where it's all coming from. He was pretty steadfast in what he said, even repeating it with your follow-up. You know, when you said essentially define USC administration, he stuck to it. The USC administration wanted him gone, just waited their sweet time. And maybe that was for good reason, bad reason, fair reason, whatever, for Frank to test the water. And then once it got long enough, I thought one of the most telling things that he said was as the process went along, it allowed Martin supporters to mobilize. And it's a big thing, because if there's enough support there to throw weight back at the school and say, look, if you do this, here's the consequence. That's not a one phone call thing to get that weight behind you. And now it's there. So my takeaway from the whole thing is, my God, what a mess. I understand, as a person who has a drive to succeed, Frank Martin's being given an opportunity. He's going to take that opportunity. And of course, he's not just going to bail on $6.5 million, but there's some pride there. Can I fix this thing? Can I turn it around? The other telling thing was David saying, I can tell you that had Martin been fired, that every player was going to leave. That's another telling thing. It tells you how much they respect Frank Martin and how much the team wants him back. Now, can you take that and galvanize the whole unit, because the message wasn't working this year? So can you take that whole group that's so loyal to you and get them playing for you? That's the question to watch going into next year.
That's a great point. It's a great point. The next question for fans is going to be, what is the dynamic inside of the South Carolina athletics department?
Mm-hmm.
What is that like? Because if there's a split between, I don't know, again, if anybody at South Carolina is watching this, I'm not assuming anything. I'm literally speculating because we don't know any truth to this. But if there's a split between president and AD, or AD and BOT, or BOT and president, whatever it is, I have no idea. That's it's not good, and it's definitely not good when the public knows about it, and it just inflames every situation moving forward. And hopefully there's something to calm those waters if they need calming.
Yeah, whatever the case, right? Whether Caslin and Tanner are or are not on the same page, the bottom line here is that the university was prepared to move on. Then the board of trustees said, well, hang on, here's why we're not moving on, and here are the reasons for that. Yeah. So whatever happened, the administration was ready. Who defines the administration? I don't know. But it appears as though they were ready to make that change. And then power brokers came in and said no. And it's a bad look. You make fun of that look, and you criticize that look when it happens at Auburn. You criticize that look when it happens at Texas. You don't want that to be the perception, because then it's, think about any other coach. Who am I rooting? Who am I working for? Am I working for the university, or am I working for these guys over here?
Right.
There's no clear line.
I tell you what, we did not get to a break earlier, but we do need to take one. So it's going to be a really late one. We're going to hit a quick timeout. And when we return, we'll have some final thoughts on this and a couple of quick nuggets for you and hoops, and then we'll get out of here. So hang tight. The JB and Goldwater Show. We'll be right back.
Peace and love at Stokes Meet Dub.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. Whatever you got planned this week, cancel it. 72 new Volkswagens will be sold in the next 72 hours at whatever price it takes. I repeat, 72 new Volkswagens will be sold in the next 72 hours. To the first 72 car buyers interested in saving up to $6,000 on a new Volkswagen for 3 days only. Every new Volkswagen and pre-owned vehicle at our bottom line price. direct to the public, regardless of profit. Qualified purchases with interest-free financing for 60 months, and all trade-ins will be accepted. Interested parties should arrive early for best selection. You will not find a lower price anywhere in the country. 72-hour Volkswagen clearance, savings up to $6,000, 3 days only at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road or StokesVW.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
$16.66 per month per $1,000 borrowed for 60 months at 0% APR with 0 down. Plus tax tag includes $499.50 administration fee subject to VCI credit approval. Expires month end.
What's up, everyone? JB here. Want to tell you about my friends at McFadden Pest Control, as we do every day on our program. I love these guys. They've been in business over 40 years, and they treat our family like they've only been around for 4 days. Always doing their best work, trying to earn our business, although they know that they'll always have it. Heath and the guys take care of our quarterly, our mosquitoes, termite bonds, anything we can get them to do, they do it. They're the best. They're friends. Heath even often texts me and just asks to see how my family's doing. It's amazing. I can't say enough about McFadden Pest Control. Switch to them. You'll never have anyone else protect your home. McFaddenPestControl.com, McFaddenPestControl.com here in the Low Country.
Guys, spring is finally in the air. You know what that means? Basketball in its home stretch. March Madness promotion at Dog and Duck's 3 locations in Mount Pleasant, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road. From now until the end of the tournament, $5 Sweetwater pints. That's right. Every Sweetwater, just $5 at Dog and Duck, Park West, Bell Hall, and their Clements Ferry location. Plus, baseball spring training, college baseball, spring football. It's all available at Dog and Duck's 3 locations in Mount Pleasant.
What's up, everybody? This is South Carolina singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, Tennessee now, but guess what? I can always keep up with the news back in South Carolina because I've got the JB and Goldwater Show. Thank you, JB and Darren, for being live, loud, and awesome.
Final quick segment on this Monday afternoon. Welcome back. The JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. Thanks to our friends at Patriots Point for presenting the National Anthem daily at 1 o'clock here. Today, that National Anthem is dedicated to every veteran who ever served in the Vietnam War. It is Vietnam War Veterans Day. My uncle, of course, served in Vietnam, and know actually a lot of people who did. So all of you who went over there and defended the United States for whatever reason, thank you so much for your service. And as they always are every day, our anthems are dedicated to you and all whom have served our great country. It is also National Nevada Day. So
got you some music back.
If you know anybody in Nevada,
Raphael Sparza, what's up?
Oh yeah, Las Vegas. Yeah, what's up?
Yeah,
what's up, Raphael?
Last time I checked, Las Vegas is in Nevada.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's also National Mom and Pop Business Owners Day.
Oh, yeah. Like all of the people that are on with us and our friends that we promote around here, like Dog and Duck and DBs and everyone. Right. They're mom and pop shops is what they are.
That's right. DBs. Ooh, that sounds good to start off the work week. DBscheesesteaks.com for more. All right, quick update on the scoreboard in the Sun Belt. I mentioned earlier that Coastal Carolina is in the middle of a 4-game series against Lafayette. They're currently losing 4-0 in the bottom of the 6th in Lafayette against the Cajuns. Hopefully they can get themselves a come from behind win there. That would even the series for the Chanticleers. If not, they'll drop it 3-1. Still mad at Louisiana Lafayette from 21 years ago when they ended the 2000 Gamecock baseball team season a little prematurely in the Super Regional there.
When they were still called Louisiana Lafayette at the time and not just Louisiana.
I still call them Louisiana Lafayette, and I don't care what any of those folks say down there. They'll always be Louisiana Lafayette.
Yeah, to me, I side that way, too. It's just odd.
Thank you.
Yes.
Also, quick note on the Gamecocks-Texas matchup tomorrow night. Again, we'll have much more in this game tomorrow. We'll mention this again. Carolina is 1-2 all-time against Texas, 1-2. That win against the Longhorns came in 2017 while South Carolina was making their run to the national championship.
There you go.
So we'll see if that's a good omen for this year's matchup in the women's basketball tournament.
It's a better matchup for the Gamecocks than if Maryland was on the other line. So I can tell you that much.
I think we all agree with that. I mean, I don't know that I would have gone as far. I think DC was half joking there about, well, Maryland's really good. I don't know if they can beat them. But you've said this from the get-go when this thing came out. That's going to be – and it wasn't because Carolina isn't good. It had nothing to do with it. It was the matchup is what it came down to.
Yeah, and it was the strength of the teams prior to the Elite Eight. DC pointed it out. I mean, what I've been saying, what you've been saying. In the women's tournament in particular, you get more chalkiness than on the guys' side of things. Typically, the best teams are going to win, and there aren't that many upsets. This year, there have been a couple upsets, but now we're down to the end of, it's the expected, except for Texas not being on the other line to face the Gamecocks.
Yep. Oregon State and Houston at 7:15 on CBS. Arkansas and Baylor at 9:57 on CBS. That is the Elite Eight on the men's side of things. And then, of course, on the ladies' side, Baylor and UConn at 7 on ESPN, Indiana, Arizona at 9 on ESPN. So a full night of hoops, and we're certainly looking forward to that. Thanks to Skylar Meade, Wes Mitchell, and David Cloninger for joining us today. Thanks to Darren for all of his hard work always.
Thank you.
And to all of you for watching and listening to our program. Mike Morgan and Gene Sapikoff join us tomorrow, and we'll be back at noon right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.